man.
Oh my gosh, man, that's so cool.
So it'd be like,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, I mean, your Nerf arsenal is a big part of who you are and what you're doing and stuff
yeah,
like that too,
yeah,
man. So, Glenn, thank you so much for joining us today. I've got Glenn Banton from OSD, who also is the overarching organization behind Operation Supply Drop, Games to Grunts, and the community of veterans and civilians that support those charitable efforts called 76 Operators. Thanks again, Glenn, for stopping by. Obviously, we've partnered with you to provide some charitable support and drive of donations to OSD and their efforts. Thank you again for allowing us that opportunity.
yeah. Hey,
Uh,
pleasure's mine, and thank you.
yeah, no worries. Where in the world are you talking to us from today?
I am out west of Austin, Texas, out in the hill country. So enough place to have land, but close enough to civilization where we don't have to leave breadcrumbs when we go to the grocery store.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
outstanding, outstanding. And you did you grow up in Texas originally, or where did you grow up?
No, I'm kind of from all over.
Hmm.
I've lived in Texas the majority of my life now, and I was here when I was younger. But I guess I was born in Kansas, Wichita. Lived
Hmm.
there for a very short period of time. Most of my family's from around there. I typically don't admit it, but I lived in Jersey for
Oh,
six,
really?
7 years of my life.
Hmm.
That's where my brother and sister were born. Round one of Texas came after that. Then it was Beaverton, Oregon, right near Nike International.
Hmm.
Then I was in Hopkinton, Massachusetts, started the Boston Marathon,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
went to the University of Connecticut for school. And then after that was Reno, Nevada, where I met my wife, had our first kid,
Hmm.
and convinced her to move back to Texas because Texas is probably the only place I've ever considered home.
Hmm.
I just love it here. I mean, shoot, we've got Texas versions of OSD because it's the only state that has state pride. But yeah, no, just kind of moved all over the place.
Hmm.
Definitely made it sort of chip on my shoulder for some things, but I think I didn't go to the same school um, until for more than a year until I was like in high school, if I'm calculating correctly.
Oh,
So
wow.
making friends, learning to kind of navigate things was always interesting, and yeah, it's fun. It certainly made me who I am today, or at least attributed to it.
Okay, outstanding, outstanding. So because we're obviously a tabletop games focused group, when did you were you always kind of nerdy and were you always into games, or did that something that came later for you, or what happened?
It's always a good question.
Hmm.
Mine's kind of an odd journey. I mean, I always enjoyed playing games, and when I was younger, I mean, just it's always worth your age. I was born in '81, so I
Hmm.
think that when you ask this question, you got to know when somebody was born. We didn't have video games in our house, just we just didn't. I mean, I'd go over and play Atari. I still remember when I beat Mario Brothers for the first time. I
Hmm.
know the house. It was actually here in Texas. I've driven my kids by it just because it's a funny thing. Hey, that's the house that I beat Super Mario, beat Mario, and then the largest disappointment in my life at that point when the game starts over. Like, wait,
Yeah, it does, doesn't
what?
it? Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
I was
Wait
like,
a minute.
yeah, I don't want to do this again.
Yeah.
And that was weird because that actually, I mean, that imprinted in my brain and certainly has impacted things. Um, but all along, just again, board games, kind of the simple family ones, and it was more about getting together with friends, the same as we do now. It's getting people around a table and having fun. But as I got older, I don't think I owned my first console. I think it was just probably when I was in college. It was an Xbox One. I bought it from Karan Butler, which
Hmm.
is I don't know how many people would recognize him here. He's an NBA lottery draft pick. I was part of the University of Connecticut men's basketball program, and I bought it from him for like $200 2 weeks before he was drafted in the lottery. So he needed $200 before he went and made millions, which is
Oh,
kind of a
wow.
funny thing. But you keep fast forwarding, and it's you have these different seasons through your life, and I've got kids now, 17-year-old daughter, 13-year-old son, and there's different games you can play at different times, and trying to, certain games you love and you want to play with your friends. You and I were talking about it. Like, I love Dominion, and
Dominion's awesome.
you know trying to get my daughter a lot younger to learn that one so I could have somebody to play with was great. And then both of us wanted a third, so okay, how do we get my son to do it? And that's just kind of fun to grow into. And now my daughter, she plays D&D every week. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I've actually never played D&D. I want to. I'd love to. I'm friends with some of the Critical Role team.
Yeah, I know. Travis.
Yeah. And I would love to play, but I have no judgment. I think the D&D community is a great snapshot of kind of how gaming has changed. And look at your team, Critical Role, some of the others. Like, the fact that a Travis or some of the athletes play D&D speaks volumes. But I come from the era, as I know you probably do, where it's like, no, the D&D emo nerds, are off worshiping the devil while they're playing. Yeah. Now, I never believed that, but because of it, it made those opportunities rare. But it's cool to see it grow, and watching my daughter, create her character, and then coming and sharing the silly stories with me, and then even watching my son kind of geek out about it. So we've got that. And then kind of lastly, I'd add, even with the video game side of it, there was my main thing is I was never into multiplayer, aside from early on with Diablo or Command and Conquer, or those sorts of things where they were less hectic than first person shooter. And then I played Fable 2. Never would have thought, never would have thought about getting into kind of that fantasy game. And I think it was my younger brother was like, hey, check this out. You might like the fighting system and kind of the good and evil thing. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I hated the fact that I think that was the one where you have to pick like your dog or your family or the world. And obviously I'm going to pick my dog. And it was just fun, but that became a gateway drug into World of Warcraft. And I probably spent, I don't know how many years ago at this point, but I spent 9 months of my life where I was actually logged into that for an average of 8 hours a day while running a global company, happy marriage that my wife would even agree, and kids. So mind you, when did playing happen? It happened from 10 p.m. till 4 a.m. every day. And I slept for like 3 hours. But I fell in love with the whole economy of it. This was previous to all of the kind of built-in add-ons. And I'd say I still dream of Azeroth, pre-Cataclysm. I can think about all this stuff, and it brings back a lot of memories. And I know I'm kind of rambling on about this.
No. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. We're hearing
that
everything
point of what gaming brings to you, whether it's tabletop or it's video games. It's the memories, it's the people, it's the places, it's the kind of the visions you can see. And I even say it when I talk about World of Warcraft, weird, I get goosebumps. Now I jumped back into it a little bit with my brother a few months back. Then I didn't quit. I just was like, I don't want to do this right now. I think it's because Shadowlands got delayed again. But I think it launched maybe a couple of days ago. But it's not the same. And I think it's one of those interesting things across life with gaming in general, is realizing and appreciating those moments you have, whether it's sitting down, with your friends and, doing D&D or playing Dominion or logging on and doing, whether it's Call of Duty or World of Warcraft, doesn't really matter, but take them for what they are and enjoy it. That's what it's about, because you can't recreate it. It's impossible. And I think I had that issue, and I think a lot of our peers have that issue, is we're trying to recreate these memories like with World of Warcraft. You can't have the feeling of when, vanilla first came out, or if you joined with Lich King and what that looked like, and the people that were there, because there's too many dynamics in existence. And instead of recreating it, which I was trying to do, I'd log back in. I'm like, this is stupid. The fact that I can click a button to go find a group for a dungeon, like, this is dumb. You know what, though? That's actually kind of cool, because the reality is I don't have the same time I had 10 years ago. I want to hop on. Maybe I still have a couple hours, but I don't have 6 hours and to spend 2 of them looking for a group. And it's just kind of changing that dynamic and growing up with other people at the same time, and then rediscovering and then sharing it back with friends or younger family members. So That's my, at least to date, short, epic, long version of gaming.
Well, the interview quit the minute you said you didn't play D&D. I'm sorry. We're just going to have to stop here now.
I
It's
keep
just not, no,
asking.
no, no. I'll set you up. We got you covered. Don't worry. I
Yeah.
got you covered. As a matter
Yeah.
of fact, as part of our Operation Supply Drop charity, we have a special thing. If you've never played Dungeons and Dragons before, the first 4 people who drop their full Discord name in the charitable link that we'll link in chat during the show,
Mm-hmm.
the first 4 people who donate $100 with their full Discord name, we will put into a Learn to Play Dungeons and Dragons game, DM'd by yours truly, myself. We may have a few guests, and you'd be welcome to join us, Glenn. Be happy to have you there.
That would be awesome.
Oh yeah.
And my daughter though will jump into screen.
Oh, that's fine.
Out.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
We love that kind of stuff. I mean, like with the remote play picking up everywhere, it's almost a necessity.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Speaking of which, if you hear dogs anywhere, you'll probably realize that that's also the case here. So circling back to something you said, which caught my ear, and it's kind of interesting because you touched on a lot of different things there with the your response there. So with games, there's a lot of different reasons people play games, but for you, you mentioned the social aspect, you mentioned the experience of playing the game, and then you mentioned the kind of the gameplay itself. Of those 3 things, experience, gameplay, or socialization, which is the one that brings you to the game in the first place, be it tabletop, video games, any of that stuff?
Today I would say it's experience. I want it to be social, but that's not, and it's not just because we're remote. I've got some other dynamics going on inside my house that impact a lot of this stuff as well. Mm-hmm. My wife's been battling brain cancer actively for almost exactly, or a little over 9 years. And mind you, even the last 2 weeks, she's to a point where she can't even use the right side of her body. So I'm getting a real fun workout 3 or 4 times a night when, like many of us, we have to go to the restroom and stuff like that. So because she can't do that. And so when it comes to games, really, I wouldn't say it's an escape. I always think that's kind of a dangerous way to look at it if you don't really contextualize it, because I do believe there's some people that it's not just with games. I see this with CrossFit as well, because I like to say there's an entire spectrum. It's not just one thing where you throw yourself into it, not just to forget for the moment, but to almost pretend like it doesn't exist, because the real world still exists. And so when I jump and log into like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, that's what I'm playing right now from a video game standpoint, I just want it to be fun. I want it to be seamless. I want it to be something to where, again, I'm real big on visuals. I have a huge appreciation for art. In the same way with even kind of the storytelling, which you would have as a DM. What are you doing? You're creating, imagination and art that way, spoken or written. And that to me is no different from my other joy, which is I just like going outside, being outside, smelling the flowers, looking at the bees, petting the cows, that sort of thing. And it's just in a different area. And so it gives you these memories, these moments, many of them I've, shared already, where I can look back. And so when you do face something tough in your life, yeah, if you have the opportunity to go log on and get with your friends, you can play some D&D, but you also have these memories that are real that should remind you about these good things. It doesn't mean the good things are lost. You can always have them again. But that's really one of those big areas, especially with how life is in my household, is I want the experience to be good and I want it to be positive. I don't care if there's bugs in something. I don't care if somebody messes up when they're playing a board game. It needs to be fun, because that's a huge part of life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And sometimes that escape gives us time to regroup and center our thoughts and come back to the problem set at hand from all the stresses we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, which I know personally for me has been huge as well. I predate OSD and getting games to troops a little bit, because in 2009 to 2010 I was in Iraq, and one of my good friends actually sent me a game called Space Hulk. which made a huge impact. I mean, our morale improved, our stuff like our camaraderie and ability to, tune out the world and have a fun game and then put it away and go back and, put on your boots and go do that. And for those who don't know, I'm also a 26-year serving veteran myself, both active duty and reserves. But at what point, coming back to Operation Supply Drop, at what point did you have this idea? What was the catalyst, I guess, that said, hey, I can do this. I can send games or coffee to the troops that are deployed. How did that happen? What's the story there?
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's a good question. So I'm, be clear, I'm not the founder. I was actually hired as the CEO to grow us to hopefully something people can be proud of today. The initial catalyst, though, for founding was like a lot of other, I think, nonprofits. It's, just kind of an individual desire to do something that's fun for the founder and fun for others. I would say at that particular time, now there's the phrase called hobby charity. I think it was more of that at that time, in the same way some dude likes bowling, and so he starts a bowling charity. But I was actually, I was hired on to be CEO. I was actually volunteer CMO for, I don't know how long, let's just call it a period of time. And our family was actually some of the larger donors to the organization, anonymously, weirdly enough, at all that time. But even, that begs the question, well, why did I even join? And it actually was catalyzed with my wife being diagnosed with brain cancer. That seems to have nothing to do with troops. I have a lot of history working with the military. I'm not a veteran myself. I have done a lot of like innovation and technology and research, and run. Trying to think of the best way to get run kind of symposiums on smart weapons and offensive cyber operations, not the actual cyber operation itself, but how to set up that sort of thing and how people communicate with each other and how to set up the teams for that, with a lot of DoD contractors. And also just historically, I've had a lot of veterans on my teams that I've hired for. And typically why I would hire a veteran over a civilian, all things being equal, is everything's just face value. It's simple in most cases. I will say I think that's changed a lot, sadly. But for the most part, historically, I liked hiring a veteran because it was the same mentality. I go to work. My acknowledgement of my work is a paycheck. And if me and the company don't appreciate each other, just tell me. And we decide if we need to keep working. And similarly, I can do the same thing. And because of that, I'd always felt, and mind you, based upon when I graduated from college, so I graduated in 2002. So from the University of Connecticut, which, I mean, half our school is from New York, probably New York City. And so when you look at, how did 9/11 impact me? It was like it hit the school. And on the East Coast, anybody who was there, you were just awake enough and just getting into things enough to where you were watching this crap on big screens, not knowing that a plane was going to hit the tower. And knowing what that meant at a school, by the way, that also was hugely geared towards finance and accounting and what types of business from the World Trade Center, it happened. Now, I did not have this immediate draw to go enlist because my circle of people, that's not what was there. I just knew growing up, I have family members, definitely a support the troops type, but I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I go and contribute professionally? But that being the case, and back to the point about why I had a lot of veterans working with me, I've always felt from the civilian side, and mind you, I've also been reminded by a lot of great guys I've mentored, once you're a veteran, post-service, you're also a civilian, or you're actually a civilian that's also a veteran if you want to get in. Just that mind switch can help a lot of people in their transition. But I figure if, I graduated in 2002 and I had a peer that went and enlisted and stayed in for 2, 4, 10, whatever years, big picture life, I was able to go develop a network of people to help me grow and succeed and really help me along. And that service member was not. That's not, yes, there's the brotherhood and the camaraderie.
There's a
That
different
does
network.
not help
Yeah,
most
yeah,
people. I mean,
yeah.
veterans helping veterans is very noble. It's a cool bumper sticker, but it's
Mm.
also with the wrong group, just going to keep you still. Everybody stays still together, where I want to help. I want to actually say, how do I catch you up with that 4 years?
Yeah.
All I need from you is just ask.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
all it
different
takes.
network altogether. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. As a person who's worked both sides of that, and as a reservist, you have to balance both of those on a consistent basis
absolutely.
as well. So, um, for you, with all this and the hiring of veterans and all that, and becoming the CEO of OSD and everything behind that, what are some of the challenges you're facing now to get these games to the troops in the first place? Or are there any challenges that are really easy? Do you have any awesome stories about overcoming any challenges or anything like that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll start with I'll hit the negative first because they're shorter, and then we'll tell
Mm-hmm.
funny stories. I mean, the hardest part is veterans as a group. For the most part, it's a bunch of males that are 25 and older, and
It is
in the just
overwhelmingly that, yeah.
broader,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and again, there's women, there's all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of minority groups, but in a broad sense, given the fact that in today's day and age, everything is a social issue. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
The wood that my desk is made out of could turn into a social issue.
Mm-hmm.
Veterans really quickly go down to the bottom. I'm not upset about that. I know exactly why. It's
Mm-hmm.
because veterans are diverse still, even though it's looked at as being this overwhelmingly, for the most part, white male over the age of 25. In reality, the group of veterans are the most diverse. It is just a cut of American society as a whole. And so a lot of people don't know how to interact with it. It's also why the veteran community has had a lot of, I would call it branding issues,
Mm-hmm.
is you have this entire spectrum of extremes, which, what does that look like? Looks like, America. And that's okay, but it makes it so when something like all the things that happened this year, veterans just keep jumping to the bottom. And so in the, yes, let's call it what is the competitive area of fundraising and nonprofits, it's always hard to have focus on veterans issues unless you sensationalize things.
Mm-hmm.
And we never do. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to get into sensationalizing suicide. I think suicide's horrible. I think whether it's 1 a day, 22 a day, 50 a day, or whatever it is, push-ups aren't going to help. And it's better to figure out, how do we split those numbers up and contextualize? Because I bet you if we, instead of saying 22 a day, said, well, 8 a day of those are because they're kind of borderline and they're not connecting with a community. Because that's a norm. That's one normal way to address it. And we're getting into it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really the biggest challenge that's out there, aside from just operating a business. Logistics and supply chain is kind of funny. I mean, for the most part, on the overseas stuff, there's one way to get it there. It's USPS, which is good. And over the many years I've done this, I've been fascinated with how fast it's gotten. I mean, it would have taken a month and a half, 2 months years ago. And now, like, there was a Marine battalion that we just sent something to, and even they were convinced it's going to take 5 weeks to get here. It
Mm-hmm.
took 9 days from Texas to wherever the heck they are in the
Mm-hmm.
Pacific. And that's kind of cool. The thing I like to share, and I always share this at the post office, is we've sent thousands of supply drops. And mind you, our unit of measuring supply drops is variable, but it's always unit level. So you can't be an individual troop and say, hey, I would like an Xbox, I would like a D&D starter set. No, ignored. It's for the unit, it's for your squad, it's for the battalion, it's for the MWR, it's group property. Because the whole
Mm-hmm.
point is to get people to play together. And trust me, I've had plenty of people that we've seen BS through that, and they're actually deployed to Kuwait, and the pictures they send back are selfies of themselves in their bunk with nobody around because they refuse to take the mile walk to go hang out with people at MWR. But I think we only lost 3, maybe 4 supply drops.
Oh, really?
One of them was actually lost. And this is where we learn to not insure anything, because you want to see something funny, watch the U.S. military and the Postal Service fight over who's responsible for a package.
Yeah.
Pointless. Another one was blown up. And the reason why I say I'm okay saying that is nobody got hurt. So, but one of our supply drops was blown up by ID. And then another one was confiscated by Pakistani. I'm not thinking of the thing. The people that look at the mail.
The customs agents?
Yeah, the customs agent confiscated it. And so we were actually helping this. It was a bunch of fighter pilots and his squadron. And one of the guys came back home for Christmas. We ended up sending stuff to him, and then he actually smuggled it back in. And it's, when I say smuggle, it's because the U.S. military had no problem with it. It's whatever the process is with Pakistan, and we've got weird relations with them. That
it probably didn't go through that same channel. It went through a different channel.
Yeah, but I mean, and this is it. I mean, we're talking again, tabletop games, video games. There's no, no magazines and whatnot that aren't appropriate in certain places. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it's more for kind of just silly stories like that, or ones you've shared. This even predates us, but I've got a buddy. He's a recon Marine, and he was sharing with me how he was part of the whole tip of the spear thing. That Generation Kill. I mean, that'd be where most people would get the context from. He's part of that whole thing, and he was saying, fighting, anybody knows, is really bad, or definitely a lot of excitement to it. But he said, man, a bad day was when when the day was over and we go back to the tent and the projector bulb was out and we couldn't play Halo. That was a bad day. I was like, that's some interesting context. But I think that's the thing when everybody kind of looks at how gaming can help different people, whether it's just a kid that's struggling in school and they've got moderate depression, they're having trouble, social anxiety, it can bridge a gap there. Firefighter, EMT, those sorts. I mean, police, arguably they're deploying every day in some way, shape, or form in terms of the high intensity and gaming or play can help relieve that. And then with the military, it's not just about the door kickers and the guys that are in firefights. A lot of people forget. I mean, as you know, the massive majority of the military is in support roles or research roles. I mean, a lot of medicine and medical advancements come out of the military. You look at natural disaster happens around the globe. Who's typically first there? Team Rubicon, but after them is typically the U.S. military, and
typically it's actually the other way around. Typically the military is there first, then Team Rubicon. But
I'm more to that joking. I'm depressed. I love it. I love this. But they show up, and that's pure humanitarian. But that's still up all day, hours on end, searching for people, cleaning up, clearing, and being able to go back to some sort of respite and roll some dice or, play on the sticks a bit. It's good for you.
Oh yeah. I mean, we had a small group that played Rock Band after doing whatever it is they were out doing that particular day. They'd come in, and because typically we worked a lot of nights, and so we'd get done at night, because night work is where it's at when you're actually trying to do things with bad guys and stuff. And they'd come in after that, at the end of the night, and they'd get together and they'd play Rock Band. And you'd think these guys were actual rock stars by like the end of the first month of that. But the days when they couldn't do that, their morale was just not the same as the days that they could do that. And I actually, we got a lot more out of everybody when they had a way to vent and shunt that stress away.
Yeah. They call that psychosocial interaction is the medical term. But that's the same thing. If anybody ever sees it, I think when you and I talked before, the documentary Restrepo, which the name is named after. I've
met the people behind that. True. I've actually served with some of them too. Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's this outpost in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, there's a track in the story that's about essentially getting a generator so that they can hook a TV up to play with Rock Band or Guitar Hero. And I think that's, again, it's one of these things where you just sit and think about it. You're like, well, it's a bunch of 20-somethings or younger. What do 20-something and younger want to do in our current culture to blow off steam. It's that it makes sense. But even over the 10 years we've been doing this, there's been a massive culture shift in the military, and a lot of it's just as people moving up or people moving up and out, where 10 years ago you'd never have somebody command saying anything nice about video games. And now you have people in command saying, hey, let's
how do I get more?
A whatever tournament. And guess what? If you beat me, I'll do whatever crap you're supposed to be doing for duty today, or and that is a massive difference. It just changes. But historically, what's the difference between, again, getting a D&D starter set or an Xbox now than getting Monopoly back in Vietnam or playing spades? It's the same thing. It's just about people getting around, having fun. I mean, life's tough, but I mean, there's lots of room to look for the good and to certainly have fun. If you're not having fun, you're probably choosing to, because, I mean, again, you can get a deck of cards. I'm sure you can play dice in the corner somewhere. Like there's lots of stuff to do.
Well, once you start getting into cards and dice in deployments, that's when people start gambling, and then fights. People always will do it, but it is what it is. But I can tell you that the great thing about like tabletop games when you're deployed is you don't got to plug them in. And that was huge for us in particular. And I'll probably, share some other stuff another time. But, I can tell you that games made a huge impact, and even made an impact when I came back to take my mind off of some of the things that we were dealing with over there. And, and eventually those bad memories fade, and you can remember those good times with the games and stuff like that too. I think one of the things we talked about, before we got started when we were scheduling this stuff is, don't you guys have a 10-year anniversary coming up?
Yeah, we do.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, and I jokingly kind of say that I'm happy to share this publicly. So our 10-year anniversary is sometime between like a couple weeks ago and the end of the year. With nonprofits, it's like, is it the day you're founded? Is it the day you got all these things? But the main thing is 10 years is a big deal. For a lot of companies, it's a huge deal in the nonprofit space. Because if you can make it 10 years, you can go as long as you need to. Now, mind you, at the same time, I genuinely believe any nonprofit should always exist to not exist. So if we could get to a point where we don't have to do what we're doing, that's a good thing. It would require a lot of self-actualization and community building. But until then, we're going to keep doing this. But the 10-year will be an entire year-long celebration. We're really, looking at a number of themes, some of which, and this is the thing I told you, kind of offline, we're certainly influenced or accelerated by, what's happened with COVID, in so much as understanding online and offline dynamics. And then for us, it's fun. Everything is so freaking serious right now. Yeah. Now I'm serious a lot, but it needs to be separated. Like, you've got to have some fun in your day. And so we're really going to just really push into the whole making fun where there is none. I mean, that's a phrase we came up with years and years ago, and certainly always has applied. It's always been used and really relevant to especially the Operation Supply Drop program. But we're going to elevate that a bunch. We've got all these just goofy catchphrases and stuff, if it ain't fun, it ain't done. And take back the fun part of gaming, because we've seen this trend with just nonprofits in the gaming space. And I think it goes where it's like everybody's grasping for attention because there's just so much stuff going on. And, the healing power of gaming. Yeah, it does. But I'll admit, for me as a gamer, and especially as the leader of this organization, there's a lot of times where gaming's not fun. It has a whole bunch of baggage associated with it. And when I'm playing, it feels like it's a chore or it's medicine you don't want to take. And I'd just rather say gaming's fun. It's important. It's simple. Camaraderie, playing together, talking with people. That's important. It doesn't need to be anything more. We don't need to be a quasi-clinical operation, because we're not. It doesn't mean we don't have a chief medical officer. It doesn't mean we don't look out for mental health, but it needs to focus on getting people together and having fun. Yeah. And then I think another thing we're kind of working on is, what is that strategy? And I think we came up with this acronym CARE, which was celebrate, assert, recognize, and execute are kind of the four things. So it's, celebrate all of the wins and everything that's happened over the past 10 years, bring back some of those fun stories, really assert not just ourselves in the space, but this philosophy and mentality around, fun and play, and amplify that side of a lot of the research that's coming out. It's simple. There was another research out of, can't remember where it was, but it was an article I was reading yesterday. And it was more one of those kind of things to you and I, but it was, hey, gaming is good, whether it's tabletop or video, from a very simplistic point of view of interacting with people. It's good for your mental health. Who would have figured? The recognize is really doing even more than we've done in the past, recognizing donors and supporters, key members of the team, and making that as a more formal part of our process. And it executes what we've always been doing. I think the problem for 10 years is that's all we focus on.
Actually getting it done. Yeah. Which is probably actually the most important part, really, when you think about it.
Yeah. It's the most important part, but it's also for donors and supporters. It's the part that nobody pays attention to. I mean, you will, like, passing, you'll look at social media. Oh, that's interesting. But really, the general public just wants to see this, self-love drumbeat. And I'd much rather say things like, hey, we've supported 1.5 plus million veterans in 10 years. That's obscene. And here's all the places we've done that. But I do agree we need to contextualize, people like to see shiny things, and that's not a problem. I mean, I've got tons of shiny things. We all have our own around us, and, just further understanding.
Stuff right here.
So that's been the benefit of all this good stuff. It's like, oh, let's make our collectibles all look awesome behind us. But yeah, that's really the focus going into it, and I am extremely excited about it. I've had more fun gaming once we kind of came to a lot of these terms, because now I can just go and do it, leave everything behind. Even when I'm playing with the community, it doesn't feel like I'm like doing my job. I still have my role, but it's fun. It doesn't have strings attached. It doesn't have baggage. So that's, again, really, really exciting, especially as I've been doing this for so many years, to kind of be reinvigorated even further.
Wow. That's actually really awesome to see that you guys have been around for 10 years. And I think, as we talked about, once a charity's been around for 10 years, it's kind of there for a long time at that point. It's not going away anytime soon. It's got legs to it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I am curious, speaking of shiny things behind you, when is the Deadpool head supposed to start talking on its own?
I intelligently turned it off this time.
Oh, okay.
Mainly because you never know when it's going to speak, and sometimes it'll say 8 phrases, and other times it'll say nothing.
That's just creepy.
It's also, it's super creepy. Well, and it has like light sensors in it too. So there'll be times like I've got a separate office on my property. That sounds a lot cooler than it actually is. But when I walk in here, because I let my dog lives in my office, a lot of times I'll forget that this thing's on the shelf, and I'll walk through. There's an opening off to where my hand's pointing, and I'll flip the light on, and it goes, whoa, like John's like oh my. And it's just, I mean, I don't know why I just don't keep it off all the time, but it's fun. But yeah, I've got other stuff like this. This is a cool story. So these are Travis Pastrana's shoes from Nitro Circus, and I got to go help produce a video a couple years ago doing a supply drop. He's jumping out of a plane, and we're doing this, and actually up above everything is a signed Xbox One X Battlefield 5 Gold Edition, a phrase Travis couldn't say. But it was one of the ones he jumped with, which was fun. But I spent like 6 hours with him, and he's a goofy dude. Anybody watches Nitro Circus, there are a bunch of just good people, the men and women that are involved with that. But he's just a goofy dad. He's who I think almost anybody kind of wishes they could be. Like, you don't want to be Travis. You just wish, like, man, that is a cool job. You just get to be a big kid, but you're actually pretty mature. But I was just messing with him, and because we've been talking about shoes and stuff for hours, and he was changing out of his jump gear and had those on. I was like, I stood up beside him. We're about the same height. I was like, those look like they're about 12, 13s. And he says, yeah, they're 12s. You want them? I'm like,
He just gave
Sure,
you his shoes.
like, why not? And he's like, and I'm like, do you need my shoes? He's like, nah, dude, I've got plenty of shoes. It's again, it's those type of stories that are hilarious, and even some of the behind the scenes stuff. Like there was one, and actually was using the commercial. There was one shot where they forgot to get something where he's like, imagine this Xbox, so he's looking up at it, so it'd be like a GoPro shot up. And there was a storm rolling in, and they couldn't get back to go up and shoot it again. And we're like, leaf blower. There's got to be a leaf blower somewhere on this property. And so there's an actual shot in the commercial, and I have all the away from it, which he's just standing there looking like this with a leaf blower blowing at him. And I was like, that is some of the best behind the scenes footage you would ever see, because you've got this basically a real life action hero that we're faking skydiving because
or at least
forgot to get one shot.
Because some of that you obviously couldn't fake. I've seen that video. It's actually a really great. Cool video, and we'll probably be showing it here during the next break if we haven't already shown it. What? That is awesome, man. That is awesome. And you've gotten to do a lot of cool stuff, setting up stuff for Operation Supply Drop. And I mean, obviously, and some of the cool folks that a lot of the people watching this show would love to meet at some point, like Travis Travis Willingham over at Critical Role and stuff like that. And,
I mean, mind you, I mean, we've been working with Critical Role for probably 6 years off and on. And Travis is just, again, he's got family that's in the service. And so he's really tied to it. He's also a Texan and a lacrosse bro, which if you look at me, I've got other random lacrosse memorabilia. But he was one where we just kind of developed a relationship over time, certainly started professionally. And I don't know if you can call us friends or not. It's kind of up to him. I guess we could vote on it. We've only gotten to hang out once just because our paths don't cross because we're both super busy, because he's the equivalent of me inside of his organization. But he's an interesting one. I mean, he's definitely, I think what I always use him as that example of when anybody starts to kind of get weirdly judgy about the gaming community. A lot of it's just ignorance. And it's not even negative, but I'll show them Travis. I'll be like, does this guy fit the profile?
Gatekeeping is going to exist with people who are scared of their special community being changed somehow. We see that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
but no, he's a good dude.
What about you guys for the future? Now, obviously, tabletop games is just one of the groups. I mean, you also do some stuff with video gamers, but with tabletop gamers, are you expanding, some of your work with some of the streams that are doing that type of stuff? And if so, what's the reason?
I mean, the main thing I like about tabletop games is they translate better. I mean, kind of the example you gave about, you don't need to plug it in anywhere. Or I use the example, like if somebody's like, hey, Glenn, you want to play Madden or Street Fighter? And I'm going to go, you probably want to hustle me. And that doesn't sound fun. But if you said, hey, do you want to play Trouble? Sure. Is there drinks and snacks? Like I'll literally play anything.
Well, if it's Dominion, you may still get hustled. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. It is absolutely possible. But I'd have fun playing that. Yeah. But I mean, we actually get more requests for tabletop games than we do video games, which is always surprising to people. We are very much trying to bring it more formally into, especially the 76 operators community. Still, video games translates onto Twitch in most people's mind, even though a lot of these same people are playing tabletop games. Some of them are even doing it with the virtual side of it. But I think you've got a lot of kind of that mid-tier, lower-level content producer that still needs to make a mental leap to understand how it translates. And I think once that happens, you're going to see massively more tabletop. There's already tons on all the streaming services to begin with, but it's a lot of these individual streamers just don't quite understand, I think, the dynamic of if you're playing with 6 different people with all the little boxes, like what does that translate like into a stream? But as your team is adapted to, Critical Role's in the same thing and many more, it was hard for everybody at first. Because you have to think about it from a kind of different point of view that's looking through a lens, as opposed to everybody's sitting at a table, the dynamic is different when I can look over directly to you right here and say something, and have that physical movement. Whereas here, you can only see me, not mid chest and up, and not that I'm making weird,
No, I'm just glad that you've got pants on. I think.
Yeah,
I think you have
or
pants
too
on.
high.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, you would have caught that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's just going to keep getting bigger, and I'm personally a proponent for it, mainly because it translates a lot better. Whereas everybody wants to do, Call of Duty or Apex or all that. So that's cool, play it, like do that all day long. But especially knowing that there's this weird thing that happens is every day we get a day older, and we see this. Some people have time to do different things, but I guarantee as you get older, you will have less time for video games, but you can create more time for tabletop games a lot more. It is way easier.
Family and friends, socialization. Everybody can come together. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
Snacks and drinks, as you mentioned. So.
Yep, it's always key.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, I really can't thank you enough for coming in today. I really appreciate that. And of course, anything you guys need, you can come see us. We're fully on board with supporting OSD, Operation Supply Drop, Games to Grunts, and 76 operators. And we love working with you guys. You guys have made it really easy for us to support your charity. And I know we just recently tweeted a massive load of boxes that were going out that we just saw today. So if you haven't had a chance, you can check out Operation Supply Drop. We're linking the charity in chat for you guys right now, and we really appreciate everyone's time today.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem. No problem.
Thanks for pushing my buttons. You really know how to turn me on.
Yeah. Oh, and it's funny, I haven't even downloaded the app yet.
There's an app to control it, to like make it go off?
Oh, dude, look this thing up. So it's like $100. Yeah. It's one of the better $100 I've ever spent.
Oh my gosh. That's going in the outtakes, by the way.